Hello. Hola. We got a little bit of a downpour here. So we're starting a little later than expected, but we trust. We trust. How is everyone doing? I feel like the intensity, our most recent moon, finally subsided. And I'm excited to share the story of, I guess, realizing I'm a channel, letting that whole thing sort of flow through me. And I'm going to start by listening to my guides. So we're going to start by I'm going to describe how I experience energy, just for the delineation of information, because I find that sometimes people see things like psychic, intuitive, medium, channel in the same bucket, and they are all distinct buckets for me. So let's start there. I see, experience, and feel energy in layers would be the best way to describe it. And the layers I see it are sort of like a 1 to 12, and then like a 1 to 12 forward, but actually the forward one is infinite. And so when I experience energy, the way I experience it is mediumship to me. So that means someone that was once in the human realm is in the spiritual realm now, always feels close. So like we'll just go by maybe what people are talking about. If I'm in the 3D layer, mediumship feels like it's in the 4D. It's close to me. I often experience it on my right side, just behind me. That's where mediumship is. Intuition is my physical body in this realm taking in information with the energy that's happening all around. So if everything is an energetic particle bumping into each other, and the ones that create mass are just bumping into each other at a faster pace, I experience intuition as my entire energetic body taking in information from my surroundings, from people, from interactions. And so that to me is still sort of on that maybe predominantly 3D realm. I see it from 3 to 5D, meaning things that we cannot see but that do exist. That's how my body would experience it. And that can be clairvoyance, claircognizant, clairaudient, clairgustant, all those, clairsentient, all those pieces. When I get into the experience of, let's say, psychic, I guess it depends on how psychic occurs for you, but psychic to me is the ability to tap in what is beyond. So while my body is tapping into what is beyond the visual eye, psychic to me, I guess I mostly see it as either going into the future or into the past. And so, well, the first two things I described are layers going upwards. Psychic feels like layers going horizontal, I guess. So sort of past and present, or tapping into the mind and the energetic field. But then again, that's sort of claircognizant. When I experience channeling, and in case you're curious, I believe everyone can experience these things. It's just, is that the way you'd like to? Do you want to spend time discovering that? And so channeling to me is a translation of a vibration that is from the whole. That's the best way I can describe it, meaning the oneness, the love, the universal energy that's out there. And for some people, the way they have the experience of translating a vibration is from aliens, if that's something you're into. For me, the best way I can describe it is it feels like my higher self. My higher self, I believe, is still participating in the oneness, the all. And for me, it is the ability to receive that information. Now, I've channeled things like color. Channeling color was weird. But again, a color is a vibration. And I wouldn't say color on the human 3D realm. It felt very much universal, bigger. But all it is there is the color orange, and I would say it's the color orange is the overall signature imprint that we experience it on Earth as, and that's still a vibration. And so my body is translating the vibration of what that color is. So when I talk about channeling, it doesn't seem as crazy to me as it might seem to some people, because I'm like, well, if everything's vibrating in the entire universe, I'm just saying that this channeling to me is the access of what is happening beyond the 3D, beyond the near space in which my body physically exists. And I would say that if you have ever received insight, say when you're automatically journaling, depending on how that comes through, you too may have experienced channeling. So channeling is usually, I'm not using normal vocabulary I use. I tend to say things at a different cadence. There's a noticeable change in the way it feels in my body, which is very important. I can feel myself dropping down from probably high beta, ideally not high beta because I don't want to live there, but beta, into a lower vibration where my heart rate slows down. Everything looks beautiful. So I'm just like, everything's so beautiful. And while I don't know for sure, and I've seen information, documentaries on it, it probably is similar to maybe a delta or theta-like state. And depending on the type of channeling I'm doing, which there's different types, I believe it's called transcendental, when you basically step aside and the information just flows through you. There can also be channeling where I feel like I'm talking to, I guess, a body of information, and then I'm translating it more so. And the reason that channeling can be challenging is that you do want to allow your body to attune to the vibration of the information for you to more easily receive it. If you have questions, put them in the chat. But what does that mean? It means that that energy is probably vibrating at a certain rate, and to allow your body to receive the vibration to translate into words, it may have to try to slow down slightly, and part of your energy is trying to vibrate at a higher rate to be able to meet in the middle. I see right now that there maybe is some go-between energy that helps us receive, which is sometimes where maybe the message gets slightly distorted or lost, even if people are quote-unquote channeling the same body of energy. But very simply, channeling to me is a translation of a vibration. And it feels different because it feels like it comes in through my third eye and my crown chakra very strongly. Claircognizance feels like it's already in my mind. This is just me though, so great news. You could experience differently, and I'd actually love to hear how other people experience channeling. But I feel like sometimes people get freaked out when they think channeling is just talking to Pleiadians, let's say, or whatever other alien body. That stuff doesn't really excite me. It's just not what my intention is, I suppose. But the cool thing is, it's all energy, and your energetic body can receive it in one way, and another energetic body could receive it in a completely different way. So when we talk about my own journey, one second. Can you take it off speaker? Thank you. Oh, we're back. There we go. When we talk about my own journey with channeling, which I would say shocked the shit out of me, if I'm being honest. So the journey to even realizing any of this stuff was happening, for me, spirit gets my attention when it's physical, because I'll pay attention. And you might notice that your spiritual team, if you believe you have one, has a certain way to get your attention. So for some friends, it's work stuff goes sideways, and they're like, what the fuck's going on? Some people, it's relationships. For me, it's body and a bit of relationships. So I was unwell pretty consistently. I had been diagnosed with something like IBS, and I was intolerant to gluten, whatever. And I had been on a trip with a friend. I'd asked all the questions, but I was generally living fairly high stress. I'd asked all the questions, and I still got gluten in my food. I was like, fuck these guys. I got so sick, and I had been having these rounds of experiences where I felt like I was being diligent, but I was living in a high stress state. It was near impossible to ever really feel like I healed. I'd had a few friends be like, I don't think the answer's outside of yourself or like another diet. There's something else going on here. And the answer was to look within, which was never my favorite back in the day, because I was like, well, that's inconvenient. I don't know what I'm going to find. So I had a doctor 5 years before who obviously left their MD practice to become a spiritual coach, obviously, because the universe is just a big joker. So I was like, okay, well, if anything, she'll be able to bridge the gap for me. She'll be able to say like, yeah, you got some physical things going on and spiritually something's happening. And I was like, okay, great. Like, we'll go see her and see what happens. So I go to see this lovely woman, and I sit down in her chair to do like a 15-minute, like, is this a fit? Like, because I don't know what's happening. I think I'm just going to have like a doctor-esque like appointment. No. So she explains to me that she taps into her spirit guides and she'll be able to kind of give me an understanding of what's happening. And, you know, depending on how it goes, maybe we'll work together. And I'm like, I don't really know what's happening, but great, let's do that. I proceed to sit in this chair, and all of a sudden this feeling of yellow washes over my body. My entire crown chakra opens up, and I'm in like a shocked state where I'm like, what is happening? I have this feeling, this crazy stuff. And she's like, yeah, all good. Everybody's working with and for you to help you like open up your channel. And I'm like, what is going on? So I have this epic experience. I say yes to working with her, but I still don't really know what happened. I did like stand on grass for an hour before I get in my car, because I'm like, I'm going to get in a car accident. This is no bueno. And so I signed up. I went back for my first session. She had recommended a book. I think it's called Open to Channel. I tell lots of people to read it. It's a really good one. And I was explaining to her, like, I was like, well, what are all these things? I'm a very like knowledge heavy person, and then my intuition will kick in. We've worked pretty hard to try and inverse that. And as she's describing things, I'm like, yeah, but isn't that just your inner voice? She's like, no, your inner voice isn't kind, caring, sweet, and directive in support of you. Your inner voice, and she's like, it's usually more this, you know, egoic kind of tougher sound. I go, yeah. And we kind of go through, and I realized, I was like, oh, that's been my intuition? That's been my guide? She's like, yeah. It's like, okay. So I read the book. I go home. I was like, well, let's just see what happens. I'll follow the steps. Follow the steps, how it felt for me in my body. I was deeply in my body, and my whole like self shot up is basically how I could say it felt. And I ended up sitting at a table. I'm like, what the fuck am I doing here? What is going on? And everyone experiences this differently. But for me, I grew up Catholic, so I have a lot of Catholic influence to my experiences. So it's just the lens my body can process information through. And there was definitely like a 12 apostles kind of vibe, but just 12 people. But instead of humans, they had triangle heads, obviously, and they were purple. And I was like, but nothing felt weird, odd, or unexpected. Like, I was like, yeah. And my spirit guides were like, we have been trying to wake you up for the last 5 years. You are so stubborn. And again, this is all just in my mind, in my meditative state. And I go, what? What do you mean? And they start listing all the ways they had tried. And I was like, but probably that stubbornness will come in handy, because it seems like what's happening? It's like, but we probably all decided that I needed this personality trait, right? Like, this isn't just by chance. They're like, yeah, but Jesus, we tried so many times. And so your spirit guides tend to have an extension of your own personality. So I'm a little sassy. I got a few jokes here and there, and I'm a straight shooter. I believe the book was Open to Channel by Orrin and Dobbin. So we have this big chat. We chat forever, what felt like forever. And they're like, yeah, guess what? Everything's going to change. And I'm like, no. Nothing's changing in my life. I just want to get like a little healthier, lose a little weight, be a little cuter. You know, the usual egoic, I would say surface level things. And they're like, no. So I proceed to go back to my coach, which was super helpful. she helps bring context and clarity. And she'd been like, sometimes it doesn't work right away. Like, be patient with the process. For me, it worked immediately. And so over the next few months, to be honest, it was just so joyful to be in the state where I could be receiving my spirit guides information. And because it feels like love. That's my opinion. It feels like love. It feels like you're back with the universal oneness. So we do that for a few months. And then I'm driving to go to the lake for the day with a friend. And her and I are chit-chatting. And I'm like, oh, well, here's the answer I see. And she goes, what do you mean you see the answer? I was like, well, you know, like the ticker tape in your mind that gives you the answer to something you don't know. And she goes, no, that's not a thing. And I was like, oh, no. It was my friend Laura of Soul Body. And so she was like, well, what do you think, like it gives you other answers? And I was like, probably. And so her and I proceeded to spend, I think, almost 3 hours, which do not recommend. Once we got there, she kept asking questions, and we got in water. And water is a conductor, so I do believe that being in the water made it just that much easier to access the flow. And it was anywhere from asking questions of people who had passed away in our families, so mediumship, into like, I don't know, what's the truth of the universe, to what's going to happen. Like, and I was just like, well, this is what I see. And I just started riffing. And at some point, we were like, well, this is probably channeling though, right? Like, this is different than accessing information. And so from there on, I was like, oh shit, this channeling is really something. Now, this may happen for you. It was deeply uncomfortable. You should know that on my journey, I was like, I don't want this. This is not logical. I'm going to have to be separate and different. I don't want this. And at the same time, I was like, I've never felt more like myself. I would often describe it to friends as I feel like I've been a fish trying to fly my whole life, and someone finally put me back in water, and I realized I can really breathe here. So those two things can happen simultaneously. I'd had, a lifetime of conditioning of trying to be a certain way, and I could feel that my inner truth was there in being a channel and an intuitive person and moving through life in that way. And so I was like, okay, cool. Well, this channeling thing seems kind of cool, but I was still only doing human design and astrocartography readings because in my mind, those felt more logical than using my intuition in my channel, which is, to each their own, but a system outside of myself had said to be true. And so I could use that, even though while I was doing those readings, I had intuitive messages come up and people were like, well, where is that in my chart? I'm like, I'd have to look at the chart to confirm the intuitive thing that came through. And so that experience happened around June, and I was like, cool. It's going to be a cool summer. We're going to hang out. We're going to do some of this stuff. And I had signed up for my first spiritual retreat, Sedona, Arizona. If you don't know it, considered to be a very magnetic, magical, energetic place. And I went to the retreat, and my intuition was off the hook. Like, if the person leading it was talking about their guides and they could see the images, my experience was seeing their guides with a fishing pole showing them the images. I could see energy. I could feel things. Like, I was just popping. And again, though, I was like, cool. This is going to be a good thing. I'll take the next 3 to 4, maybe 5 years and figure out what's going to happen. And the message I kept getting was like, no, it's now. You got to do the work with this skill now. And I was like, and that's really a bad idea because I don't have enough savings. I don't have a plan. What the fuck am I going to do with all of this stuff? And so as I'm leaving Sedona, maybe we got some energy work to do on my throat after this. As I'm leaving Sedona, oh, okay, a little energy through the screen. No, thank you, anybody that's trying to do that. I had heard very clearly, do not leave, stay another night. But I had rented a car, I had a flight. It's not exactly cheap to stay in Sedona. And I was still sort of new to trusting it at that level, meaning my intuition, my messages I get. I was still pretty new. And so I was like, yeah, no, we got to go to the flight. I don't magically have another $500 to $1,000 to accommodate this direction. So as we're driving to the airport, we start driving through a bit of a storm on the highway, but whatever. I'm from a place where that happens all the time. That didn't faze me. And then you can start to feel the electricity in the air because there's some serious thunder and lightning. And then I actually saw a lightning strike, and my friend that I'd made at the retreat. I was like, should we keep going? I'm like, well, it's probably fine. And then as I'm driving, out of the left corner of my eye, a lightning bolt comes down. They're massive. I don't know if you know this, but they're massive. And it proceeds to strike the earth, but I think part of it, dispersed because it's always trying to find the quickest way to the ground. And so a very small portion of the lightning strike, because my left foot was flat on the ground of the car, went up the left side of my body and was like completely shocking. It left me with like an ankle that felt like I had rolled it badly, and my eardrum was just like ringing. And I'm in total shock because now the middle of the road also went up in flames. Oof, it was a big one. So I'm like, high on adrenaline. My friend that's with me was like, oh my God, I can't believe that just happened. She helped me get off the highway, and I was like, wow, okay. Feels like somebody's really trying to get my attention. And I don't know if anyone else would have interpreted it the way that I did, but I was like, I think I'm going to have to act on the messages I received sooner than later. Actually, I think I need to quit my job, like now. Some other crazy things happened at the airport that just keep reconfirming all the pieces that I had experienced. Like I got off, and all of a sudden there was just like a sea of female monks. We dropped the car off, and I was like, okay, yeah, sure, maybe that's just something that's happening. Then I'm walking down, and I see a backpack far in the front of me with these like sequence wings on it. And I'm like, well, that seems kind of interesting. That's catching my eye, but it's all good. And I love a massage before a flight. And it's a big airport there in Arizona, in I guess Scottsdale. Okay. And so we waiting for a flight. We go get a massage. I'm waiting because there's only so many people. So I'm waiting in this chair in this random part of the airport. And 2 employees come by. They're doing an employee tour of the airport. I guess it must have been the person's first day. And the door that's like the utility closet where they put their stuff opens. And the fucking backpack with the wings is there staring at me. And I'm like, okay, got it. Yeah, feel like there's some messages coming through. Ends up that the lightning storm that I had driven through grounds all flights that night at the airport. We do not fly out. We have to stay in the most murderous motel I've ever seen because everyone had to book out flights immediately. And I was like, I have to change my life now. So I went home. I tried to ignore it because I think this was very inconvenient. I've just spent 14 years building a career that is paying me well. I'm enjoying part of it. It's good. It's not great. And I can't just become a fucking psychic. Like, are you insane? I can't become just a channel. But within a month, I was like, oh my God, I'm going to have to do it. So I have a whole series of things that I walk people through to be able to help this. But it's just like imagining the worst case scenario, imagining if you don't do it, and then eventually taking the leap. That was now 3.5 years ago. And it all worked out. I got out of my job right before COVID happened, which my spirit guides were because you wouldn't have quit. That's why we were on a tight timeline. You wouldn't have quit if you were still at that job when COVID hit. Like, okay. And there was another wild series of events that happened, which I'll share in another recording. But everybody's a channel, I believe. You can choose to engage or not. Starting with your intuition in daily small steps is a way to get you there because you're building trust with receiving. And we will talk about more steps about being a channel in the future. But if you're listening to this, there's part of you that either knows that it's true for you or it's a curious discovery that's being put in as a piece of information that is informing your growth. So if you have questions about channeling, you can always send me a DM. I feel like we're going to talk about this more as I hear yes in my ear because my guidance team is telling me so. But we are here to move out of the mind and into the body, to be receptacles of the energy around us. Because your mind is beautiful, but it's not meant to lead you. And you may never be a channel, and that's okay if you don't want to be. But you're already intuitive, and it's time to tap in. And so there'll be a myriad of ways we talk about how that might occur for you. But the invitation is to get curious. The invitation is saying, it's kind of funny that I watched this live of all lives. Go get the book. Send me questions because I'm always best in response and my channel loves it. And my invitation is to just notice how you feel listening to this. And if you feel resistance, ask questions. If you feel excited, ask for the next step. I had a similar experience, got my job at 17. Under 17 years. So, okay, there we go. Samantha's got the same thing. I do have a whole other set of information that I downloaded about timing of people popping. And popping to me says, we're still working on our throat chakra to share these things, but popping to me says that you tapped into collective wisdom beyond the 3D. Oh, wow. Okay, good. Maybe we're not ready to talk about that yet. And you were able to operate from that place, from a place of deep trust. And if that kind of information is curious to you, Dolores Cannon can be a really great resource to listen to. I had previously downloaded all that information. When I say downloaded, channeled that through, and then I found Dolores, and I was like, oh shit, maybe I just wasn't making that all up. Because you're still going to struggle to believe, because it still sometimes feels crazy. And then eventually you're going to build enough information or consistency in the receptivity of information. They go, okay, I'm going to choose to believe. I'm going to, it's like deeply believing yourself and then holding on to it somewhat loosely just to be open to what else might be true, because only you are experiencing how I like to see it as if we are collectively a set of lights shining our light through a prism. It's just your vision of how your light shone through the prism of truth. And somebody else might shine their own individual light through that prism and have a truth that is complementary, expansive, creates curiosity, and for you to decide what's true for you. That might be a little bit too out there if I haven't talked about that in more detail. But if you found this, there's a reason. Allow the curiosity of what's here to engage you. We're going to talk about this some more. But yeah, send me a DM if questions come up. Intuition and channeling are some of my favorite topics. I hope you have the most magical day whenever you find this.